2022, so that we can, lead up to the actual activities. So time are going to have here ICT connect the problem for you, so you can be able to attend an idea site for the day. You're more than welcome and feel free. It has a job. If we forget that COVID-19 is still with us, so we still need to observe social distancing. We still need to keep on our masks, sanitize, as and when the need arises.
Yes,
over to you, Jens. You can continue. They go by the name of Soulful Memories. And I think they've done justice to the name. They've really given us Soulful Memories. Soulful Memories, thanks a lot. You are highly talented. more and more, as you celebrate African music with your time. We're going to officially start with our program. And I indicated earlier that we're running behind schedule. And we have our program projected on our screen. I think it will be good just to get around now what the activities will be. And then we can formally open to ensure that we are within the time that we're scheduled. I think in the meantime, when we start the program, I would like to officially, release you. Thanks a lot. We really appreciate. I think we're going to go to the formal parts of the program. Item number one being obviously the opening and welcome. We'll have student contributions, which will be the second item, by our students who will offer us, poetry, and request that they be ready, because we're going to move with a bit of speed to ensure that the primary purpose that we're here is for the lecture, to ensure that we have sufficient time for the lecture. And then thereafter, we're also going to have a UMP choir, and we're also going to have a welcome address by our Vice Chancellor, Professor Tokomaiki. And then thereafter, we're going to have an introduction of the guest speaker by Professor Gumede, the Dean of the Faculty of Economics, Development, and Business Sciences. And then thereafter, we're going to have a keynote address delivered by Professor Kwapra. And then thereafter, we're going to have a vote of thanks that will be given by the Dean of Students, Dr. Paul Mamiza. I thought that it would be important that we give the rundown of the activities, so we have an appreciation of how the program will be ongoing. We also welcome those that have joined us online. If you are on Twitter, you can join the conversation under the hashtag I love my Africa. It's important that when we celebrate such a very important day in the African calendar, it's not confined to the walls of UMP, but it's rather an important event that is celebrated within the country, in the continent, and the rest of the world. Officially, I would like to welcome you. Obviously, first welcome our guest speaker, Professor Kraft. You're welcome. Secondly, our Manco members management team of the university, led by the Vice Chancellor, Professor Tokomaiki. I see also other members of Manco, you're welcome. Members of Manco, Dr. Maniza is a member of Manco. The deans that are here for both faculties, Professor Mbewe and Professor Gumede. I would also like to welcome our stakeholders, be it internally, our academics. I see you in numbers here. And also welcome our students, and also welcome all the people that will be offering entertainment items. And lastly, also welcome those of you that are joining us online. We really appreciate that you have been patient. We could have started first, but we have been patient with us, and you're still with us. We really appreciate. And I think with those few ways, I just want to officially welcome you to the Africa Day lecture of 2021 at the University of Mpumalanga. And with those few words, you're officially welcome. I would like to request the poets. I hope that the lady in the form of Ayanda Dwane, Lam Shefu, Lana, Sim Power, and Tano the poet, to come and render the item for us. I don't see them. Will they be coming from Daredi? I'm told Daredi. The platform is yours.
Hello, good afternoon. The name is Simpiwe, but I go by the stage name of Simpower, and I'll be doing a poem that I wrote about neo-colonialism and its effects. So I enjoy. She wore no makeup when found her. Her eyes a shade of brown as they reflected the sun that was her heartbeat. Her head engulfed with the shine of platinum stars that she was crowned. And on her mouth sprung a song that held her children as they danced on her skin, which was more precious than the purest of silk. You see, she was a virgin. He was an untamed perfect, constantly searching for his next victim, his clothes made from the gold he had stolen from all his victories, and all his victories were tied to his tongue, smooth as a sword through butter. A noble look for the lowest of scum. She got blinded by the glitter of his charm, so he entered her. Tearing down the walls of a charm as he molested her. She never had a chance to give permission, and that was his advantage. How quick the foreplay turned to bondage, and he never stopped. From the crown down to a footstool, he dug deeper into her for all her treasures, and the hungry cries of her children made him to indulge in pleasures. And whenever she pleaded and begged, he started weeping her back until there were 50 shades engraved, and they grew darker every time you put the gold, diamond, or gold from her belly. And as many years that have passed, the children are still changing, begging for liberty, for the one they were given was time. Thank you.
Lona ke ngimshengu usabala mabuza khoma namavuzo gama ngimkebuko ngingibingelele. A very short one
about to be delivered titled Silencing the Guns. The struggles of our forefathers, the struggles of freedom, the struggles of rights. It all seemed to be conquered 1960, but did the guns get to be silenced? Blazing on our direction, seemingly we can't move, we are stuck. It is now our fight. Difference is that me and you, we are fighting a natural disaster. The pandemic, the COVID-19, it is ready to devour each and everyone. It is our fight. Dear black child, the future has glued its eyes on you, regardless of the circumstances that you are facing. It doesn't care if the pandemic is there or not. We have all become doctors without the doctorates. I say to you, it is our fight, our time to silence the guns that are blazing on our direction. We are capable without the fight of freedom, because we already have freedom and rights. It is now our time to silence and break the silence of the COVID-19 that has indeed made its plans to devour and injure our continent, our world. This was the young African talented Tebogo Mabuza from Mpumalanga, the place of the rising sun. Ngiyabonga.
Good day. I go by the name Langa. I'm here to recite a poem titled Lovely Letter. Dear, dearly child, I have nothing left on my breath. You have enough in store to last. How can you still yearn for more? The memory of your fake smile, it brings me tears. How foolish I was. As you invaded my secret place disguised as if meaning well. I fell for your trick and gave my breast. After you sucked me dry, you kept asking, left me bone dry, you kept crying. Even though knowing all your tricks, I still fell for it. And yes, I may not give warnings. I left clues for a while, so I can stop the act. They're awake now. From the illusions, they fight back with nothing but an eye looking forward. Forward to the day when everything that is swallowed came out and bring back was mine. Reminiscent of the beautiful days when all was pretty and charming, attracting as many eyes of beauty. Well, they took that from them, but slowly they regain, little by little, they retrieve everything. I just know that more are working by the minute they can tell what inside that evil mind. As gazing through these words, the smoke seeping in their chest as venom, your trace still exists amongst mine. But as time goes, realization comes. They will find what they lack, that one piece to fit the puzzle. Yes, I cannot rejoice fully, for I am still recovering. Well, for your ears, take this. Just know that more are working and soon to be enough, beating you in your own game. The economy will return for me, Mama Africa, to you, adopted child.
Sanibonani. Igama ngu-Ayandazwane umangethu uNtshosha uLinda Mkhonto uphikele ucebe ekhulu uMangweni uMafa walingana uNtshosha uLinda Mkhonto insele kacebe ekhulu. I am here to recite a poem that I've been believed for almost 5 years in my life that it hasn't been recited by anyone. There's a message that I want to pass. I have been sent by your social forces to deliver this message. I believe that it would arrive well in everyone's ear. My beloved Africa, I call upon your name from destiny. I wanted to talk about your people. I am sorry. I am sorry. I am sorry about the wrongs that we have done to you. Africa, Africa, Africa. Ngiswele indawo, ngiswele indawo. Yazisa ukuthi umhlaba wethu ugcwele ezandleni eziphuphuza igazi nezigcwele impande yesu. How clumsy you could be, Africa. How clumsy you could be, Africa. I am tired. I am tired solving an X whenever our issues with gender-based violence haven't been resolved. I am tired knowing about someone else's history whenever I could be learning a lot from you. We need diversity. We need diversity. From the source of our roots of our ancestors, we know very well that unity has always been within us. Now listen to me. Ayiko impunga yehlathi. They say it always seems impossible until it's done. I guess history repeats itself so many times. It always seems impossible until it's done, Africa. Within this hour, I will stand next to this tower because these hours and the words that I will drop will be sour to you. It's only the real eyes that will ever realize the real lies. So mine today decided to be the real ones. I guess that you will be the real ones someday. I'm about to rise, Africa. I'm about to rise to fight for this world, for this beloved Africa. As I rise, I can't wait to imagine Africa so beautiful that I can't sleep at night. My beloved Africa.
Uthe seqede kungidala wangivikela endleleni zami wangipha amandla okuyofeza amaphupha ami inkinga zokhula kwami angeke zihambe endleleni zami angifune qamba manga nayizola ngilalanga ngikhala ngashayiwa ngangikabanga la ngiyakhona ngive ngiyofunda bonke laba bangishanga amatshe bafuna ukungilimaza lalela ngiyowaqoqa onke lawo matshabo ngigibele phezu kwawo ngibakhombisa ukuthi I can fly high although my life has been dry phela mangihluleka bebezongihleka till I die if I cry they go by night and make a big bright I am Thando the poet sanibonani. Ngide kutonthulela inkondlo sihloko sayo sithi ngimi lo Ngimi lo anginalutho lenginako ingondlo kuphela buka kodwa ungathinzi thinza kodwa unganambithi nambitha kodwa ungagwinyi ngimi lo ngisempumalanga indzawo yemnotfo lapho le angashoni khona buyani empumalanga sive bumnanzi belanga sive bumnanzi benzabuko sengibuyile sengifikile sengikhona ngomkhathi angidwandwe nqumalo ngomnguni ngumntwana ngimnyama ngelibala ngimhlophe ngenhlitiyo esikaleni ngi-short division kodwa ngimutse ngengqondo ngiphuma le nginatha umfula umlumadi mangome kakhulu nginatha umgwenya. Yes, I am an African, not just because I was born in this beautiful land, but because Africa was born in me. An African, not just because I walk in this beautiful soil, but because I walk the walk of Nelson Mandela. Yes, ngizomlandela. Ngiyabonga.
Much appreciated, Ayanda Zwane, Lamshengu, Langa, Simpower, and Tando the Poet. Our students, socially aware and engaged. And I think that is quite impressive because we have the caliber of students that are well aware of their environment, politically, socially, economically, and otherwise. We really appreciate the items that they rendered. I think the next item, I'll request that the UMP choir gets ready. We'll need them on the stage to come and render an item. We will request that they render 2 quick items before we can request the cultural group and thereafter the Vice Chancellor to give the welcoming address. Can we make it snappy? The choir, we are waiting for you. It's not only us who are waiting for you, the world is waiting for you. There are attendees that have joined us online. They are also waiting for you.
Na babantu besibiza na babantu besibiza 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 wozani nizoboni UMP. Na babantu besibiza mama besibiza mama na babantu besibiza mama besibiza wozani nizoboni uwe na babantu besibiza mama besibiza mama Nkosi, Nkosi sikelela.
Yes, I'm a guitar born from.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot to the UMP choir. They're not only passing, at 85% annually in terms of throughput. They're also very talented in music, in poetry, and I think the performance was very touching. Another interesting aspect is that the song that you heard before the last one, the remix version of Kosisigelela, was sung actually in 4 African languages, 1 being Nguni, 2 being Swahili, 3 being Shona, and the 4th one being Tsonga. So that's quite interesting. It shows the level of creativity. And this kind of work was not done elsewhere, but it was done here in UMP by one of our academics, Mr. Msaga Mona, who's the one who translated the song to be in those 4 languages. So I think it's quite, a showcase of, talent. So we really appreciate, and just to remind you, those of us that are joining online and those of you who are here, you're welcome to join the conversation on Twitter under hashtag I love my Africa. It's important that you also share your thoughts there on what does Africa Day mean for you. We've gathered here under the theme, creating conducive conditions for Africa's development and intensifying the fight against COVID-19. And Africa Day is a perfect day for us to reflect on our past, our current challenges, but to also engage deeply on the kind of Africa we want going to the future. Because yes, we know the history, but I think the future is much more important than the past and the present. So with that being said, you'll see in the program we're supposed to have a cultural group, but we're going to have them later on after the keynote speaker. We'd like to invite now the Vice Chancellor of the university, Professor Tokomayeki, so to come and give us the welcome address. We can give a round of applause.
Sanbonani, Jumelang, Ausheni, Loshani. Why are you so? You can't hear? Oh, because of the Masiare, Molweni. Good afternoon. Goedemiddag. Namaste. Namaste. It is indeed an honor and a privilege for me to welcome all of you to the Africa Day celebrations. I think we have heard already from the program director that the theme for this year is creating conducive solutions for Africa's development and intensifying the fight against COVID-19 pandemic. A special word of welcome to our guest speaker, Professor Kwesi Kwapra. We are honored, Prof, to have you today as our guest speaker. Welcome to members of MENCO, IMENCO, staff, the UMP community, the SRC, students, UMP choir, you are so beautiful, and the cultural group in anticipation. Welcome to all the guests who are joining us remotely. Africa Day is the commemoration on 25th May of the founding of the Organization on African Unity, OAU, in 1963. I think every celebration we must always start there to remind ourselves what is this Africa Day. On this day, that is 25th of May, 1963, leaders of the 32 independent African states signed a founding charter in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. In 1991, the OAU established the African Economic Community, and in 2002, it established its own successor, African Union. Africa Day, therefore, is a celebration of African unity. At the same time, it creates a platform for us as Africans to reaffirm our commitment to work in partnership with other Africans to realize our potential by nurturing an environment that is conducive to prosperity, democracy, and peace. Africa Day in the South African context provides African brothers and sisters from all over the continent an opportunity to get to understand and appreciate one another. It provides us with an opportunity to distance ourselves from xenophobia and all the ills associated with it. We deny our humanity if we treat others differently because they come from another country, and worse, if they come from another province within South Africa. As the UMP community, we embrace and celebrate our connectedness to the African continent. In our very vision, we state, to be an African university, leading in creating opportunities for sustainable development through innovation. We believe that Africa Day provides us with an excellent opportunity to advance our vision, and in particular, to live our value of diversity. In our value of diversity, we commit to the following. We say, we reflect and serve diverse regional, national, and global communities. We promote an open society where critical scholarship and expression of a multiplicity of opinions and experiences are actively encouraged. We foster an environment in which diversity is appreciated, respected, and celebrated. We are committed to accessibility, inclusivity, and social justice. We are establishing a tradition of celebrating Africa Day annually since 2015. We have been fortunate to be able to invite great scholars to reflect with us on our great continent. This is a clear message that we value and embrace our African identity, our Africanness. UMP, as an African university, seeks to recognize, affirm, and entrench the African experience and context in the academic project. The vision prompts and propels us to have a keen interest in what happens on the continent and really be passionate about playing our own role properly to ensure that the continent succeeds. Our research and development agenda, our innovation initiatives, and our endeavors should be about improving the continent and optimizing its resources. Commemoration days like this one serve as reminders, therefore, that there is a lot to do out there and that our identity and humanity as Africans is worthy of being respected and celebrated. The trauma of colonization, the scourge of poverty, and high unemployment rates still plague parts of the continent. As if the challenges were not enough, the year 2020 was to see the terrible COVID-19 pandemic grip the globe. The whole world is at a tailspin, including the African continent. We know very well that education is critical to development. We have to continue to work hard towards the economic transformation of our continent. My invitation to students and staff alike is to use these platforms to educate ourselves about our continent. An eminent scholar in the person of Professor Kwesikwa Pra will be addressing us today. Please make use of this opportunity to learn and reflect. May his address trigger interest in all of us who are on this continent to advance knowledge, skills, and competencies on this continent that is home to all of us. When, as the UMP community, live up to all our values we hold dear, especially excellence, we can begin to impact and transform the continent. As we celebrate Africa Day, let us take this opportunity and reflect on the value of Ubuntu. Let us reflect on our humaneness, our Africanness, and realize that umntu ngumntu ngabantu. We are interdependent and interconnected. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Prof. Thanks a lot, Vice Chancellor, for that welcoming address. We really appreciate. I think at the center of the message is that we need to value our Africanness. But Africa Day also provides us, with the opportunity to advance African unity. So I think that's the message that all of us should take with. I think colleagues who are still joining us online will request that your mics remain on mute, so that we're not able to pick up the sound, the side. We really appreciate that you're part of the celebration. I think we're going to move possibly to the next item. We'll hold on a bit, just for a keynote speaker to be settled. But I think with due time, we're going to invite Professor Vusi Gumede, who's the Dean in the Faculty of Economics, Development and Business Studies, to come and officially introduce our guest.
Greetings, colleagues, friends, and especially the Vice Chancellor and other members of the Management Committee and our keynote speaker, and particularly also colleagues that are joining and friends that are joining online. The keynote speakers just walked out, so I'm trying to talk slowly so that I don't finish before it comes. But let me start. I mean, it's an honor for me and for us as the university, as the Vice Chancellor was saying, to be having Professor Kwesi Kwapra for this important day, the UMP 2021 Africa Day lecture. And it's a privilege for me to introduce him. It's a moment of pride for someone who's been a mentor to many of us, someone who inspires many of us, and who's also a father figure than just a mentor. The program director, will remember yesterday, I hope he remembers what Professor Pras said in passing as we're coming back from lunch, as evidence that he is indeed a father figure to many of us and a very affable human being. It's a moment of pride when you think about his career, which is what I should be focusing on actually. I was calculating the years and I hope I got them right. I think I got them right. I've known him for a while. It comes to about 48 years as an academic. And you'll know when I list some of those professorships and other roles he's had in 16 countries, both within the continent and outside the continent. And I think it's encouraging that 30 of those years, he was in an administrative position as a head of department or a director within a university. And if you take that, all of what I've just said, that he's still been able to publish over 50 books. These are the books that he has written, include edited book, and some of these books have been translated into Arabic, Chinese, and French. And it's also very encouraging. You can be an administrator, you can be a head of department, you can be a director in an academic environment and still publish over 300 journal articles. He has published over 300 journal articles, which is unusual in the social sciences. We do hear this in other sciences, but in the social sciences, it's something to be proud of. Professor Kwesi Kwa's career started in 1969 when he was lecturing in Germany. But before that, he had already been lecturing when he was doing his master's in the Netherlands. And he spent time in Makerere University and in Uganda. It's an interesting story for me when we discussed with him this some time back, that one of the eminent Ugandan scholars, Mahmoud Mamdane, Professor Mahmoud Mamdane, was still an undergraduate student at this time. Professor Kwesikwa Pra was in Makerere University. He was in the University of Zambia, from the University of Botswana, and during those years as a head of department in sociology and anthropology. He was in China as a visiting professor in the Institute for West Asian and African Studies. He spent time in Cambridge University, in the Center for African Studies as Newfield Foundation Fellow. He was in Sudan as a professor of sociology at the University of Juba. He was in Lesotho, University of Lesotho, and there he had the responsibility as head of research in the Institute for Southern African Studies, and later became director of that institute. He then moved to Kenya, head of research as well in another institute there of sociology and ecology in Nairobi. Then from there, he moved to Namibia, where he was lecturing research methods in the Institute for Namibian Economic Policy, and also worked in helping the Vice Chancellor at the time to start the new University of Namibia. That was in the early 1990s. And then he came to South Africa, his home, in the holding room. We were talking about this, and he said, "This is my home, and I'm not going anywhere anymore now." Anyway, he's been moving around, and in 1992, he came to South Africa, took the professorship in sociology, Department of Sociology, where he was also the head of the department, and stayed there, became a senior professor, and then formally, officially retired. But he didn't stop. So after stopping in 1997, the University of the Western Cape, he then founded the Center for the Advanced Study of African Society. He was the founding director, and he was the director of that center during 1998 and 2017. And he donated that center to the University of the Western Cape as part of the linguistics department. He's retired, but not entirely retired. He's now director of a publication outfit. He started African Centuries Editions Press, and that's what keeps him busy, and working with various universities, assisting in various aspects, including helping the University of KwaZulu-Natal, University of Zululand, to start a research center for African languages. In the interest of time, I'm going to stop here, but I must highlight that he's also received various awards, and I do want to highlight the one from Ivory Coast, which was the Commander National Award. He received a Kwame Nkrumah Award of Pan-Africanism that I'm very proud of having nominated him some years back. And he has an honorary doctorate, Doctor of Letters from the University of West Indies, and many others. I have a lot of pages here, but I think I should stop here. He's going to talk to us today about an issue that the Vice Chancellor emphasized, Professor Malikso emphasized, the issue of African unity. You're welcome, Professor Pra.
Vice Chancellor, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, students. It is my honor today to have this opportunity to address you on Africa Day. I'm thinking particularly of the younger ones, the students who performed so well earlier on, the poems and the music. It was so admirable, so well done, so encouraging and so inspiring. I have elected to speak to you on a variety of issues, especially the younger ones I want to draw attention to. A number of issues impinging, affecting our Africanness, the implications of the present conjuncture of history and what lies ahead for you, because you are the young ones, you have the future ahead of you. And maybe offer some tracings of indicators about what lies ahead, some of the challenges which lie ahead, which you'll be facing in the future. Now, let me start with some words of comfort. Comfort, not from spiritual texts or grounds, but comfort from science. Comfort from the study of human societies and history. Many of us, even in my generation, and my generation was the generation which saw the end of formal colonialism in Africa and the beginning. I was born during the Second World War. In fact, I say to myself that I was lucky to be born. I was born in 1942. I was born in the month when Hitler was defeated. It was in December 1942, when Hitler's army, the Sixth Army, was defeated in the great battle we had at Stalingrad. Now, 45, the war ended. When the war ended, right across the world, colonial peoples started agitating for freedom from colonial rule. And it registered best in Asia. You will recall that 48 saw the independence declared for Indonesia from colonial rule. 47 had been India and Pakistan. Vietnam went to war against the French after the defeat of Japan. Sri Lanka, Ceylon followed. Now, Asia had about a lead of about 10 years before Africa, before anything similar started in Africa. In Africa, the first country to be liberated from rule was Sudan. Sub-Saharan Africa, I'm thinking of, but not sub-Saharan in the real sense, in a way. Sudan got its independence in the beginning, January 1956. Ghana followed 57. And then by the end of the first decade, that is the end of the 50s, the next 10 years saw 2/3 of Africa become free. 2/3, that is the year 1960 to 1970. 2/3 called colonial freedom. So you see that the Second World War opened the way to the struggle for colonial freedom. South Africa has been the last chapter in that process. And it was most difficult because of the peculiar character of colonialism that we had here. After each of the world wars, freedom comes to people. Free people get their freedom. This is what history has taught us. The end of the First World War was in a similar way the ushering in of freedom. 1917 saw the collapse of the Ottoman Empire. And it ended up in 1920 with greater freedom for Egypt. The whole of the Middle East, which was controlled previously for 300 years by the Ottomans, was chopped up, mainly by the British and the French. The main protocols which were signed by Sykes, the British diplomat, and Picot, the French diplomat. They created the Middle East as is now: Syria, Lebanon, Iraq, and the Emirates, etc. It was done by two British diplomats, two Europeans, one French, one British. But it had seen the collapse of the Ottoman Empire. The Arabs had hoped that they would be free of colonialism completely. It didn't happen. It was just transferred. The empire was handed over from the Turks to the British and the French, mainly. Italy was unhappy with that. And it explains why Italy attacked Ethiopia later on. The important point to remember is that after each of the two world wars we saw in the 20th century, there was greater move towards freedom. The First World War also ended up with the breakup of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Places like Yugoslavia were created out of that. Remember, the war had started with the shooting, the assassination of the Archduke Ferdinand. Now, what does all this mean for us, Africa? So, from 1960, I say, 2/3 of Africa became free in the decade from colonial freedom. But the freedom that we've seen is freedom in inverted commas. It is actually neocolonialism. In other words, the classical character of colonialism was lifted, but the economic structures, a good deal of the social structures, and the legacies of colonialism at the cultural level, particularly, have remained with us. What has happened is that there is an emergent and indigenous class of Africans who've taken over responsibilities in a structure which is largely intact. They enjoy positions of privilege. We enjoy positions of privilege in a system which is not basically completely changed. See? And we've also inherited other legacies. Remember that before colonialism, these borders we have now did not exist. Colonialism in its last phase started in 1885 with the division of Africa into territories for the exploitation of imperial European powers. All these borders were created that way. So the histories of the people on the ground, the history of the Botswana, the Sutus, the Nguni peoples, the Luo peoples in East Africa, the Lacustrian, Eastern Lacustrian, Western Lacustrian peoples, the Oromo, Borana, the Pula people of West Africa, divided into 17 borders. They are in 17 different countries, the Pula. All this happened as a result of the colonial partition. So in other words, the autonomous indigenous history of the people was usurped. It was truncated, it was cut short. And new identities were created for us. Our history as an independent part of the world was interrupted. And within the space of 60 to 70 years, the system they established came to an end, but did not completely end because the structures they had created and some of the things they had put in place remained with us. For example, the languages we use now. We use English, French, Portuguese, Spanish in one little country in West Africa. These were all the result of 75 years, just 75 years of interrupted history. Now, you, the young ones, are inheriting this condition. This condition has left us with 54 countries on this continent, divided up with some straight lines, names which were created by imperial powers. Nigeria, for example, is Niger area, created by the wife of Lord Lugard, the same Lord Lugard who was previously in Kampala subjugating the Baganda using the most advanced technological weapon of the time, the Maxim gun. And he boasted of mowing down the people with a gun. He became governor of Niger area, so they call them Nigerian. People in the Gold Coast, or Gold Coast, what is Gold Coast? Or the place which they got gold, where they established the first fort in Africa, Elmina, the mine. Gold Coast was the place. The next country is Ivory Coast. Where is Ivory? Was this created by the Africans? No. Ivory Coast is just, they used to get ivory there. So they call it Ivory Coast. The people there are divided by a border which divides one nationality into two big slices. In each territory, they form 45% of the population. On one side of the border, they are called Baule, Ani, Nzima. On the other side of the border, the same people are called Nzima, Brom, Asante, Kweu, etc. Form 45% of the population in each side of the border. In the north, the people were just like here. The Botswana, in Botswana, they form 83% of the population, but they are a minority of the Botswana in Africa, because the majority are this side of the border, and they call themselves the nation of Botswana, when the majority of the people who have historically been Tswanas all the time from the beginning are this side of the border, and they don't form a nation here. So this sort of thing is the result of what you are inheriting. And they try to make us proud about the fact that they have foisted on us these new identities, these identities which deny our history, because one of the implications also, look at it carefully. Soon after the process of independence, there was a rush to write histories. The history of Zambia. What is Zambia? It was called Northern Rhodesia because Cecil Rhodes's people from 1898 crossed into that part of Africa. You see. And then, but before that time, it was not Northern Rhodesia before, so just a little more than 100 years ago, it had even another name. The people there were different people. They spoke different languages. Nyanja, which is spoken across the border in Malawi, is called Chewa. And it's created as a different language, written differently, because the president wanted to be different from the other people on the other border who speak the same language, Nyanja. So these are the problems we're facing. These are the problems you've inherited. You are being asked to make real and holy something which is basically against history, against the integrity of our cultures, something done in favor of imperial powers. You are being asked to make it work. Make it work in favor of whom? In favor of the same interests, but globalized now. And I'm warning you that it won't succeed. Gambia can be a sovereign country with its independent economy in the present-day world. Togo can't be a separate economy. Ghana can't be a separate economy. Kenya can't be a separate economy. Uganda, you can look across Africa. We're trying to make things work which cannot work. That is why in one country after the other, the economies after a short while, 2, 3, 4 decades, begin to crumble all throughout Africa. It's happening. So your task is to take hold of all of us and reformulate, recreate, retrieve the trajectory you were on before it was so rudely, cruelly interrupted by interests external to Africa. The interests which took out our tongues and put into our mouths different tongues. Interests which alienated us from ourselves. Interests which make Africans often feel inferior to other peoples. And the inferiority goes very far. It gets to the point where people are trying to change their color, use creams to change how they look. People trying to look Western out of desperation. And we see it also in our children becoming Englishmen. Hugh Masekela made a statement that after 20, 30 years, they will be saying, we used to be Africans. We used to be Africans. That danger is there. That danger is a real danger which is facing us. It is not a danger facing other peoples. The Asian peoples who were colonized also are on the rise, on the march. The center of gravity of the world economy is now in Asia. China is standing up now. In 1842, after the Opium War, they took parts of China along the coast. They cut it up into colonies. The Chinese described the 19th century as the century of shame because the British, the French, the Americans forced opium on the Chinese to to buy opium, and they destroyed the Chinese from that. The Chinese rose in 1912. They established a republic. They defeated the imperial system. In 1921, they created a revolutionary party. 1927, they started fighting. 1949, Mao Zedong stood up. He says, China has stood up. The rest is for us all to see. When I went there in 1980 as a visiting professor, they just started what they call the four modernizations. They were just beginning to shake, Deng Xiaoping was beginning to shake the place up. Now you see, 20, 30 years later, they have become the leading power. In the next 10, 20 years, they become number one. We can also rise. It depends on you, the young people. It depends on you. 60% of the arable land in the world for food is here in Africa. We have more resources than 80%. Africa is the second biggest land mass in the world. The size of Africa is like India, China, West Europe, continental United States, New Zealand, and Argentina rolled into one. It's a huge part of the world. But we have this problem with imperialism, Western imperialism. But we've had also another imperialism, which I want to warn you about. That's an older imperialism. The imperialism of the Arab conquest. Till today, it ravages this continent. Arabs entered Africa 639 AD under a general under the caliphate called Amr al-As. I have seen the mosque which was built in the honor of him in the conquest in 642 AD in Cairo, the first mosque in Africa. Within 150 years, they were all the way to Morocco. Then they crossed into Spain, the Iberian Peninsula. They were defeated by a French king, Charles the Hammer. When they came southwards again to Morocco, by then they had Arabized the African people there. The African people there are Berbers. They call them Berbers, barbarian, you know. But the language they speak is Amazigh. Today, they are only a minority now. They are in the mountains and scattered in North Africa. The language is dying, but they are resisting. But it's a weak defense they have now, the Amazigh. The Amazigh people were Arabized. They became Arabs because if somebody takes your language, takes your customs, and your values, and replaces that with his or hers, then you change. It is not a color which defines us. Please remember that. It is not a color. It is the culture which makes anybody. If you go to Palestine, there are Jews who are black and Jews who are blonde, but they are all Jews. Pakistan and India don't agree, but you can't tell the difference by looking at them. Who's Pakistani? We are lucky that we have the color, because the other identificational instruments that we have are weak. I mean, religion and so on. And our languages are not written, you see. But because of our color, we can identify each other from a mile away, that the majority of us are. But that is not the main thing which makes the African. Africans are a group of, or groups of people with a similarity in culture and languages and conjoined histories, intertwined with these cultures, reflected historically on the African continent. They happen to be 99% black, but it's not the blackness which makes them ultimately, it is the culture. It is the culture. So if we allow the cultures to be destroyed, then we are finished. Then we will become other people. Then we will become Englishmen. Like our children are fighting in the University of Stellenbosch, that they want to learn in English and not Afrikaans. So they are fighting the Anglo-Boer War on the English side. Instead of fighting for us to use African languages, like the Asians are doing. Vietnam was a French colony. They use Vietnamese now. The Chinese use Chinese. Indonesians were for 300 years colonized by the Dutch. They use Bahasa, Indonesian. Malaysia, they were a British colony. They got their independence in August 1957. They use English, but they use their own language also more, Bahasa. When I was a student in Holland, I remember some of my colleagues said, oh, their cousins were traveling from Indonesia to Malaysia to be teachers of Bahasa, because Bahasa was more developed in Indonesia. But now they have universities which use Bahasa. It was a British colony. Why is it that in our case, in a country like this, where technology is advanced and everything, instead of us developing a university where we can use also Sesotho or Nguni, we are dying to speak like Englishmen. What is wrong with us? Are we so defeated that we have no... Remember that the Boers fought the British. One of the main reasons was the language question. From the 1820s, after the Napoleonic Wars ended, the British wanted to anglicize them. They refused. The last president of the Transvaal, I think it was Martinus Steyn, he refused. He said he wouldn't sign the agreement, the Treaty of Vereeniging, unless the language question is addressed. So they understood what the language. Language is the center. It holds a culture. It's the memory of a people. It's the history of a people. In the language, you can tell the society, you can describe the society from the language. Everything in the culture, in the environment, of the people is captured in the language. If we allow our languages to be destroyed, then we are finished. But it won't happen. It won't happen. Because there's a certain historical tide, which affects all humanity. That is the tide of emancipation, freedom. You see, for example, women got their vote in most of Europe only after the 1920s. Would you believe that? They tell us about democracy. But women got their vote only after the 1920s. In places like Ireland, freedom came to the north of the country for the Catholics in the 60s. I remember that very well. When they were protesting and marching for their rights, civil rights, they call them. In America, they call themselves democratic. Now they are suppressing the African descendants to vote. They're making it difficult for them to vote. But there's a tide, a historical tide of emancipation, of freedom, which nobody can stop. It can be arrested temporarily. It can be halted, but then it will surge forward again, and it affects the whole of humanity in the end. All of us are moving forward in that way. It's discontinuous. It doesn't go in a straight line. It goes up and down and up, but it goes forward. So definitely we will survive. But the danger is that if we're not careful, we will become other people, we'll be destroyed. And we're seeing the process, as I said, the Arabization of Africans continues. The changing of Africans to become Arabs, it's continuing, and it's continuing. That's why the Sudanese war was fought, the civil war in the Sudan. That's why it was fought. There is a war in Chad. Recently, 2 months ago, you remember the president of Chad was killed in war. He was killed by mainly tribesmen in the border of Libya and Chad. They are Tebu, the Tebu people. They are an African group, but financed by the Turks, who have an interest for resources in the area. You see? But it's all the process of the Arab. In Mauritania, they've taken over the place. Slavery has gone on. Remember, slavery in Africa has been longest towards the Arab world, Arab-led slavery. So when we think of unity, we must realize that 2/3 of the Arab world is in Africa now. Mr. Gaddafi, who many people still admire, he did not have nice words for us. Privately, he despised Africans, you see, and called African leaders slaves. In Amman, he made a speech, and I have it on record, that Arabs should move into Africa because that's the only space for expansion that there is. So I'm drawing your attention to these things to alert you to think, because you are inheriting Africa, the younger generation, and you are going to face challenges. The biggest challenge is the cultural challenge, the language challenge. You've got to get it right. If you get it right, everything will come right. Because the moment you get it right, we can have universities in Sesotho, for example, where Botswana kids, South African kids, Basotho kids from Lesotho, kids from Namibia can go and study in Sotho-Tswana. You can have Nguni conglomerate university where you write with a harmonized orthography spelling system, which every dialectal variant of Nguni can read the same thing and know that this is slightly different, but he can understand what he's reading. And economically, it will be viable. And regionally, what it means is that we retrieve our history. Our connections across these colonial borders are then, in practical terms, put aside, cast aside. We can have these identities we have, but in practice, they would be mitigated. They wouldn't have the same effect on us as they have now. I will, I think, stop here and then answer a few questions, if I may.
Good morning, Prophet. I'm just wondering, what do you say about people who are saying that teaching our children in local languages or in African languages will disadvantage them as they grow up because you cannot do science in Tsonga or mathematics, geography, and the rest? Thank you.
Now, the answer there is very simple. Look at Asians. Look at the examples I gave, the Vietnamese. Why didn't the Vietnamese say that we cannot do anything in Vietnamese? We must do it in French. Or the Chinese. Why didn't they say we cannot do anything in Chinese, but in English? There is no language which from Adam is made a language of science and technology. Languages become languages of science and technology because we make them so. We make them so deliberately. The Afrikaans language, for example, the first standardized version of Afrikaans was only in 1913. 1913. The beginning of the language is in the 1870s as an accepted, because before then it was the language of the servants and the slaves. They call it kitchen language. You see. But they were able to introduce science and technology into the language. We don't have to look far. The Afrikaners are, we live together as common citizens. Yeah? So this thing of it is not, that's not true. There's no truth in it at all. If we want to do it, all we need to do is to establish. I went to Iceland some years ago, a few years ago. Now, Iceland used to be a Danish colony. You may not know this. Iceland was colonized by the Danes. There are no more than 350,000 people. Now they use Icelandic. And I was introduced to their terminology council. They do it voluntarily. There is a group of about 15 top academics, and they meet once a month to create new terminology for their language. So it's the easiest thing to do. If you get the correct expertise and you put the people together, it can be done in no time. It can be done in no time. So let's not be fooled by that sort of talk.
Good afternoon, sir. Mine is short. First question would be, in your opinion, more or less, how long would it take for us to amalgamate our vernacular languages into science and technology? Also, my second question is, what of the European descendants that are currently in South Africa now? What's your opinion on how we should move forward in trying to also bring back our lost cultures and also trying to move forward with the times? Thank you.
Now, I didn't get the second question very well.
The second question is regarding the European descendants living within Africa right now. In your opinion, my question is, what should be the posture we take on regarding them? Because we want to absorb our lost cultures, but also we are living in a situation that is prevailing. We don't want to, I think, be the enemy of progress. Thank you.
Those are two good questions. The first one, science and technology, how long would it take? It depends on us. If we are serious, we should be able to do it. I think if we are really serious, we should be able to do it in 10 to 15 years. If we are serious about it, 10 to 15 years, we should be able to do it, you see. Now, that's not a very long time. That's no time at all. Look at the time the Afrikaners used. They took it to primary school, Afrikaans to primary school in 1913 for the first time. And then universities, 1918. You see, 1925, they were using it in parliament. See, 1933, they produced the first Bible in Afrikaans. You see, they have still not finished their dictionary, but they're joking, you know. I think they are a bit lax now about it, you know, but they did it. They have universities, they study anything in Afrikaans. You know, it took about, so 1913 to 1933, it's 20 years. It's one of the fastest, just like modern Hebrew. They started it in Israel. They started it in the end of the 19th century. By 1913, I think it was in one of the technicons there was studying everything in modern Hebrew. It took a very short time. So it can be done anytime. Bahasa, Indonesia, they did that also. So it can be done very quickly. The second question about European descendants. Remember, look, we live in a world which is getting smaller and smaller. We must all learn to live together. Never mind where somebody's great-grandfather was from. If we are citizens, we share common citizenship in full equality, same rights for everybody, you know, same rights for everybody. But please, let us make our rights real. You don't say the same rights for everybody, and then you give the minority, you give them more rights, and your own rights you kick under the gutter. You say they can use their newspapers, they can create universities, but I don't want to study in my language. And then we want to complain. we want to complain. They say we want to study in our language. We are the ones who are saying we don't want to study in our language. So we can't blame them. But we must all be citizens in the same. We're living in a world where everywhere you go, there are different people from different corners living as citizens everywhere in the world. That's a democratic principle. It's an emancipatory principle. It's a principle for humanity, all of us, you know. So rights, they should be descendants or no descendants, whichever, whether they are from Timbuktu or Iceland. So long as they are citizens, we must have equal rights. But I don't say equal rights means that if they've taken all the land, then we say equal rights. No. But equal rights should be equal rights for everybody, and everybody should be treated equally.
No, thank you very much. I'm having two brief questions. Now, something you highlighted during your speech was the concept of identity, which can be directly linked to the concept of dignity, to say that how do we celebrate Africa Day by restoring the dignity of a black child? Because when we speak about the dignity of black child, yes, we continue to say that we are African, but what do we have to show for it? As you were submarining through your reply, you mentioned an issue, a concept to do with the distribution of wealth. Can we fully realize or can we fully celebrate African Day without having anything to show it for it, without restoring the dignity of a black child through the distribution of wealth, the decommodifying of education? Now, the second thing I have, the second question I have is, how can a university or institutions of higher learning move towards restoring the dignity of a black child, especially now that you are talking about the concept of languages? In the University of Mpumalanga, it's almost like we're moving one step forward and two steps back. You get a situation where you are introducing Portuguese over all other African languages. You understand? So as institutions of higher learning, how do we then begin to even introduce indigenous knowledge into the curriculum? Thank you very much.
Yeah. I like your questions, but listen to what I'm saying. I say, please don't use color as equals to African. Move away from that. Think about it properly. African is a cultural category. Say African child. Learn to say African child. There's nothing wrong with saying that. Don't say black child. A black child can be an American. Do you understand what I'm saying? A black child can be an American. African descendant, yes, but American. Say African child so that we relate it immediately to a cultural foundation, a cultural foundation, and hold it there, because that is where our Africanness lies. It doesn't lie in our color. Our Africanness lies in our culture. So I agree with you that the inequities of opportunity, of wealth, and so on, but those are political issues. I'm not so much concerned with political issues now. I'll leave that to you to decide yourself. Political issues, I'm not interested in addressing political issues now. So think about Think about that. Now, the question of introduction of Portuguese, yes, that will worry me also. But it's a trend which is not just here, it's all over Africa. It's still going on. The admiration, Stellenbosch, what I'm saying is kids were demonstrating. It wasn't the administration which was telling them they must use English. The kids themselves were on the street demonstrating that we want English. We don't want Afrikaans, we want English. As if the question is simply one of English and Afrikaans. They don't say, we want Nguni, no. They don't say we want Sutu Tswana, no. So please, let's be careful what we're saying. Let's get our priorities right. Let's get our priorities right. It is a problem right across the board, not only in South Africa. If you go to Mozambique, after independence, they were carrying on with Portuguese, strengthening Portuguese. After all the war they had, all across French Africa. There was a lady who was telling me once that French is an African language. It's a famous musician, I forget her name, from Ivory Coast. She was insisting that French is an African language. You see, so it's a problem with all of us in Africa. We have that problem now. And it's a problem which we will collectively resolve, because as soon as we've resolved that, our history as Sutus will come back. It will connect back into the past. You see, it's something like a memory recall. As soon as we empower the language, we modernize the language and empower it, then our connection and pride in ourselves and the continuity with our history comes back. Now, it is not for me, to talk about politics. That's not in the way in which you want me to talk about politics.
An ongoing one that we may not finish in this session.
Thank you.
Prof, thanks a lot. I think your lecture was, reawakening in a sense. And I would understand where we have a lot of hands that are still burning to ask questions, engage you. And I think probably it's the same on our online platforms. That probably this is a broader topic that may need more time to engage on. And I think you'll understand, given the importance of the issues that you raised, Prof, and the challenge that you have put to us, to say, can Africa stand up? The Chinese decided to stand up. The question is, can Africa stand up? Can Africa rise? And I think in line of our theme of creating a conducive environment for development and continuing with the fight against COVID-19, the question is, are we able to respond to those challenges? Probably we the only continent that we want to vaccinate, but we're not producing. So we rely on the rest of the world to produce vaccines for us so that we can vaccinate billion plus people. So I think the question remains as to, can Africa take advantage of its demographic dividend like the Chinese have done? So I think that there's quite a number of questions that we need to respond to. And most importantly, you have touched on the question of culture and language as the epicenter of our identity. And I think that's very important as we go back and reflect. Few years back, not far long, universities across the country witnessed what we call today as the fees must fall. But it was not ending there. It was saying that let's have a decolonized education system. And I think possibly is an engagement that will be ongoing to see to it that as Africans, we're able to respond to the question, can we rise? Can we really rise to claim the future that we want? With that being said, I will request the cultural group just before the vote of thanks. We're almost at the end. The cultural group to take to the podium.
have to celebrate and forget about everything. If you only have now. I go my Thank you. my silly ladies. The name of their dance is called Ingota. Whoa. And this is still a Swaziland performed by man. It's a celebration dance. They perform this kind of a dance only if there is a newborn baby in the family.
Thanks a lot. They go by the name of the Safuka. They go by the name. They're not just a cultural group. They have a name. They go by the name of Safuka. I think that in the interest of time, we will not ask them to leave the stage, but they will not be that energetic, and we'll invite the Dean of Students, Dr. Paul Maminza, to come and give vote of thanks. They'll restart with their energy once it's done.
Thank you, Program Director. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to do the vote of thanks. It's always appreciated if one gets an opportunity in an event of this nature, especially an event that is so touching. Now, when we talk of our Africa, the VC in her speech spoke about the Organization of African Unity when it was started in 1963, and when the African Union took over in 2002, when the Organization of African Unity became the African Union. And when I said this is very touchy, this event today, when we talk of Africa, it's because we need to ask ourselves, who fooled us? And I think our guest speaker was talking to that. The African Union has their agenda, they call it Agenda 2063, which means they are saying in 100 years since the birth of the Organization of African Unity until 2063, we need to get the Africa we want. That is their slogan, the Africa we want, which then tells us that each one of us has a role to play before 2063 to achieve the Africa we want. Now, if we have to achieve the Africa we want, what went wrong? Because it's not like we want to go to, we are there in Africa. And our guest speaker really touched to the core of that. Yesterday, I was just checking out of interest, and that's what Prof spoke to, the issue of language. I think we all understand that language is the medium of thought. If you don't master a language, your thinking capability is compromised. Now, he was talking about language. And as I was saying yesterday, out of interest, I checked the African Union, the AU, as we all know, it's us here in Africa. Its official languages are the following: Arabic, English, yes, I said English, here, French, here, Portuguese, here, Spanish, here in Africa, and only Kiswahili, the African language. Something is wrong. That's the African Union, which was formed in 2002, but whatever they were changing from the OAU, they didn't touch this. I also checked, Prof, because it goes exactly to what you're talking about. The Economic Community of West African States, called ECOWAS, that block there, they have got 3 official languages. It's in Africa, né? The western part. French, English, Portuguese. Here in Africa, I checked the EAC, the one in East Africa. They've got English as the designated official language, and then Kiswahili as the second official language. That's East Africa. But let's come home, this side, SADC. Ourselves, Swaziland, Lesotho, Botswana, and the like. For SADC, there are 3 official languages. Again, French, English, and Portuguese. So something went wrong, and the speech today was talking to that. Let me come to what I'm here for. I was just giving that so that we understand this is a very, very important event for us as Africans. I'm even tempted to continue this in Nkulume Siswati. But then I don't want to deny some of you to understand what I'm saying. Well, firstly, let me thank again the program director, Mr. Ubisi, who has been directing this program so very well and professionally, as always. I also want to give a vote of thanks to our Vice Chancellor, Professor Mayekiso. Prof, thanks so much for the very informative welcoming address. You know, when people who have been to events, they ask somebody to come and welcome, the person comes here and he tells you where to find the toilets. Yeah, if nature calls, who can get lost to find the toilet? So VC, we could see you took your time to prepare for this and talk to us, bringing UMP as an institution into the context of what we are discussing, this issue of Africanism, talking about our values, the value of diversity. It's central to what we want to achieve as Africans. Prof. Gumede, the task of introducing a guest speaker is actually scene setting. Because the way the person who introduces the guest speaker does that creates something in our minds to have an interest or not to have an interest to the speaker. And Prof, you did that very well. We really appreciate that. Thanks a lot, sir. And then I want to go to our esteemed guest speaker, Professor Kwesikwa Pra. I love these surnames. Pra, I'm thinking of my means, how to coin it. But thanks so much, Prof. You actually were not only thought-provoking, because when you are thought-provoking, you touch somebody's thinking capability, but you went deeper and touched the spirit where wisdom and foolishness dwell. If you talk to people and you don't touch their spirit, you may not be able to assist them to separate the two. Because you touched the spirit, once you talk of culture, which is key to how we want to define ourselves as Africa, not the color. You were touching the spirit, and that is touching our wisdom. It makes us to ask ourselves a question like, what should I do from here? I don't want to get much into what the prof said. I think what is important for us, each one of us, is to individually make sure that you contribute to what we want this Africa to be. Because we can also contribute to what we don't want this Africa to be. If you are a young person and you are disrespectful, I'm just giving that as an example, you are contributing towards what we don't want this Africa to be. He spoke about the issue of the color of the skin. A lot of people, we see them every day contributing to what we don't want this Africa to be. So thanks so much, Prof. Time is always the enemy of good things. Because of time, we had to stop, but that was so nice. We really appreciate your intelligence and sharing that vast amount of knowledge with us here at our university, the University of Mpumalanga. And you make us really feel so proud. We really want to thank you, sir. I also want to take this time to thank our choir. The VC did comment that they are so nice looking, well dressed. Keep it up, guys. We are so proud of you. You taking UMP to the next level. And for them to come and render those items here, they had to prepare, obviously. And we saw some of our colleagues, staff members participating, working with the choir. And we really want to thank all of them for that. The cultural group, I understand it's called Savuga Africa, is it correct? Yeah, so that's the Savuga Africa or Savuga Africa, which means Africa Awaken, so that we solve these problems. Our students also participated in rendering poetry items, and that is highly appreciated. You make UMP to, of course, realize that vibrancy that we want to see in our students. We want to see vibrancy. Ourselves, we are not into that space of vibrancy, but we try from our side. But we make and create these opportunities for yourselves as young people, so you need to do it. So we want to thank you for that. Also, our band, the Soulful Melodies, they rendered nice musical items for us. The other day, I think it was last week, they had a session there in the amphitheater. I had the opportunity of going there and I listened to them. They sang the song Nkosi Sikelel Africa in another version. Oh, I really loved that, the way they did it. It was so nice. So we will see more of them, I hope, as they are supporting our university. And these are our own students. Then let me also thank the organizing team, the committee that worked tirelessly to get everything in order, everything in place, the arrangements. We were told that this is also virtually beamed and the like, so there's a lot of work that gets into that. We really want to thank you, colleagues, the staff members and the students who are also involved as part of the organizing team in setting up everything. You did it the UMP way. We are so proud of you. There are other staff members who contributed in different ways in their spaces and so forth, encouraging students to participate. I know of a few from Student Affairs who have been involved working with societies and so forth. Maybe they may not necessarily be in the organizing team, but from their different offices, they supported the project. I also want to thank our ICT guys for making it happen. Though when we started, there were some glitches, like a ha, ha, ha. And that was not going well, but everything got sorted. So, that's the problem of being old. You talk these things, Anisha. So we really want to thank you guys, making sure that everything goes very well and up to where we are now. We really appreciate you for that. The photographer, Chris, taking beautiful pictures for us. We want to thank as well for coming. Let me thank everyone then, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, students, everybody who has been participating virtually, joining us online and taking part in this wonderful event of ours. And I do hope that we will continue thinking about what the professor shared with us this afternoon, and maybe try to get an answer. Did someone fool us, or are we continuing fooling ourselves? Thank you. I thought the program director was going to run after me with my...
Thanks a lot, Dr. Maminza. We are almost at the end of our program, and I think just one last item before I can allow our entertainers to entertain us again. On behalf of the university, the VC would like to, in a true African style, thank our guest speaker. Don't know, Prof, do you want to come to the podium, or will it be fine there? Okay, I think it's gonna be there. Thanks a lot, VC. Much appreciated. And I think, colleagues, thanks a lot for being here. Making time. It's been a little bit a longer program. We didn't start at the time that we anticipated. Okay, I think when we have officially closed the program, obviously we're going to request members of Manco, members of Imanco to remain to have a picture with the guest speaker. And I think with that being said, we really appreciate your cooperation, including those who had joined us online. We really appreciate that you could stay through the event. Savuka Africa, we also really appreciate your energy levels. I think you're going to continue as and when we have officially adjourned, so that we can get to, enjoy your entertainment. There was also a need for the choir to perform again, but I think that the Savuka guys will continue. We'll just have to make, a proper video for our choir so that we can enjoy when we're sitting in our desks, because they sing so beautifully. With that being said, the program is officially closed. Thank you.
What's your
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. Do not leave. We have prepared refreshments for you. Mr. Mona, I think probably they can go on the other side so that they can have refreshments. But we really appreciate. Thanks a lot.